For Sunday, May 17th, you found the Georgia gang. Topping our agenda today, a rare loss of a car maker for Georgia. Governor Deal vetoes a big spending bill. And Insider Advantage and Fox 5 have a poll of the presidential prospects in Georgia. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
We're glad you could be with us on this spring Sunday. We're going to begin with Governor Deal, who suffered a rare loss, really. Volvo decided it would go to South Carolina, not Georgia. And Phil, the governor's been on such a tear of attracting industry to this state. This one stings a little bit.
Well, it does. You can't win them all, but he's in the game, and as we kind of discussed a little bit last week, it was the battle of the incentives. We weren't quite sure who was offering what, but we do know now that there was a lot of packages that were offered by both South Carolina and Georgia, and just like in a poker game, we got
outbid.
Beat on the river.
That's
well,
right.
You know, it's part of a national trend these days, the business of states opening up their accounts to lure prospective manufacturers. Tennessee does it, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama. I wonder where it ends, frankly. Now, Georgia's got another, what, $40 million in the kitty right now to look for somebody else.
That's right. And, you know, you have to be careful with incentives, too. And I know the legislature has looked at this. There's a certain point where, you have to know when to hold them and when to fold them.
Yeah, you can't give away the store.
Right.
Well, that's a good point, Dick, about the $40 million. I mean, listen, they definitely were focused on Volvo, but I think we should stay tuned. There are going to be a few more announcements here on some of the pursuits that the governor and working with other local mayors across the state to try to attract more business to Georgia.
You know, to be honest, and I think the state industry and trade people would be angry at me for saying this, Volvo's not much of a get. It's not Volvo. It's a Chinese company.
Well.
And the cars they make are still left over from when they were owned by Ford. They have no new looks, no designs. I don't think Volvo was a big deal.
Well, but be careful, Dick. There's a lot of Volvo drivers in this region now that have had it for a long time.
Mostly moms and station wagons. I get that. All right, Phil, Governor Deal was confronted with a bill that was a pet favorite of Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle. And that's that, I forget there's a nickname for it, but
it's the New Markets legislation.
New Markets, yeah. $110 million to seed businesses. Now, is this going too far? The governor thought it would cut a hole in the budget. My thought is, I don't like the state picking winners and losers any more than I liked Obama picking solar energy.
Well, that's point number one that I agree with, and number two.
Well, how's that any different from getting the car company?
Well, let's explain to the viewer what we're talking about. Yeah. First of all, it's a credit for insurance companies to invest in so-called community development organizations, and that's where the governor said that could blow a hole in a budget, and I happen to agree with that. So you can argue, has it worked in some other areas? Perhaps. Has it not worked in other areas? Yes. But I think the governor was, as I say, right to veto it.
Well, I think there was also reports that other similar bills have been tried in other states and to not much success. And it just blew a hole in, putting money where it could go someplace else.
But politically, it was a blow to Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, who had championed it.
Well, not so fast. I think the Lieutenant Governor, when we look at this a year from now, I mean, he's to be applauded for trying to bring new businesses and create jobs.
Well, I agree.
In Georgia. However,
I agree. It just wasn't apparently thought through.
Yeah, but I think that it's a 2-year session. And even though the governor vetoed it this time, I think the lieutenant governor will revisit this next section and hopefully get it passed. But I think he's to be applauded for trying to create new jobs. And look, the governor couldn't pass every single bill. So this was one veto that definitely stood out in a lot of people's minds.
I'm queasy about picking winners and losers, singling out companies, industries, friends, family. We've seen how that works in DeKalb County. And we've seen how that works at the federal level with Solyndra and the other solar energy companies. It's worrisome. A little inside baseball here. The House Republican caucus met this week to replace Larry O'Neill as majority leader, and apparently went pretty smoothly, no big deal.
Well, there was a contest for the caucus chairmanship between Alan Peake. You remember Alan Peake, he of course did the cannabis oil bill, and a representative, low-key, been there about 10 years, John Burns of Newington, Georgia. Have you ever heard of Newington, Georgia?
Newington, Georgia.
So, and it was rumored that the speaker really was behind Representative Burns, and so he's the new leader.
Well, Burns really worked it. I mean, I can tell you, you talk to a lot of my Republican colleagues and and friends. I mean, he really went to work. He really sort of brought a retail sort of politics campaign to this caucus race, and he should definitely be congratulated. I mean, Alan Peake is a great representative that have done a lot for this state, but John Burns definitely is from that southern part of Georgia, and it has a lot of great relationships at the Capitol.
One other statewide thing before we get out of here and get on to local. I noticed there's an outcry now for lower truck speeds because of these accidents in South Georgia, specifically the one that killed the 5 nursing students from Georgia Southern.
And a truck fell over on Andy and 14th Street.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
that wasn't speeding. That was just a cement truck, and that was
But
awful.
he shouldn't have been in the middle of downtown either.
Well, yeah, that,
Andrew Young, yeah.
Andrew Young, but
Yes.
he was injured, but not seriously, but it was still frightening.
well, he was able to walk to his car, and he said he was a little bit sore. But anyway, in these truck speeds, I don't know. Do you have a separate speed limit for trucks? I guess you do in some cases. Trucks
Well,
have to stick to 55, what have you.
Yes, and of course there's certain areas where they can't go, especially in the Atlanta area. So
And they're supposed to stay to the right. I think there's
that's,
some
I've always been in favor
regulation.
of truck lanes,
Yeah.
which a lot of cities do.
I think it's all about safety. I mean, look, the data will show that there's been an enormous amount of truck accidents in our state, more than I'm sure in the last few decades. Now, we don't want to be discriminatory towards truck drivers. I mean, they got to deliver products, businesses depend on them every day. But when you have these accidents happening over and over again, and a lot of them being because of high speeds, I definitely think we need to look at that.
All right, that's it for the statewide news. When we come back, we'll turn to local, and we'll begin in DeKalb County where, gosh, there's a new school superintendent. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
Time now to give the DeKalb Board of Education a little special praise, if I may. They've completed their search process for a new superintendent. It went very smoothly, except for one bump in the road that not involved DeKalb. It involved the search firm itself. But in the end, this week, DeKalb County presented R. Stephen Green as the sole finalist for the school board, for the school superintendency. They'll vote within the next 2 weeks to approve him. Theron, I have to announce my own biases here. I'm a native of Kansas City. That's my hometown. I know that school system very well. And I think this Stephen Green looks like a real serious guy who can turn around a troubled system.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, big kudos to the board and definitely the committee that was created to assist the board in finding this new superintendent. He comes from Kansas City. It's a smaller school district, but definitely you're going to see some striking similarities between some of the programs that he wants to implement.
You know how bad it is in Kansas City? Let me give you a little footnote.
Okay.
I looked this up. When I was in high school in Kansas City, that school system had 87,000 students.
No kidding.
Now it's
Today it has 17,000, maybe dropping as low as 14,000. That's because of a meddlesome federal judge,
Oh, please.
led by an attorney who was a football teammate of mine, ruined that school system, drove all the white people out, and left it just a shell. And so if Stephen Green can turn that thing around, he's all right.
Wait a minute.
Huh?
I don't agree with your
Well,
assessment.
remember that this is the famous
Yeah,
case where the federal judge said,
Atlanta had 120,000 students. They've got 60,000 now.
well, it's not
and
quite the
it's-
same as Kansas City.
Well, no, it's not. But I'm just saying that there was a suburban flight that happened to all urban school districts, and most people characterize it as white flight, but it was white and black flight. Middle class just left the cities
Well,
went to the
but
suburbs.
here's the deal in Kansas City, which you have to remember. A crazy federal judge, and he must have been a wacko, I didn't know him, ordered the school system to spend $2 billion of taxpayer money to build a bunch of new schools.
Oh.
One of his crackpot ideas was to take the most inner city high school, Kansas City Central High School, and build a huge natatorium to get suburban whites to come there to go to school and swim. Are you kidding me? Come on.
Well, let's get back on topic. So,
Yes.
so no, but
But I wanted to get that out of my
No,
system.
but that was a good setup, Dick. You were very nice, and I knew something was coming. But no, I definitely think that he's going to come in. He said that he definitely wants to continue some of the programs and some of the great successes that Michael Thurman has implemented. I mean, but let's look at where we were 2.5 years.
By the way, he's got great test score results, too.
Yeah, 2.5 years ago, you had DeKalb County schools who were not in a surplus, and now you got $80 million surplus. They were going through this whole Sachs investigation and whether they're going to keep their accreditation or not, and the graduation rate is improving. So I think that, while they are going in a new direction with a new superintendent, I definitely think that Michael Thurman Thurman deserves a lot of credit for what he's been able to do the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, again, Jeff and I have talked about this, Theron. We thought Michael Thurman would be a good bet to stick around just because he stabilized the system, but he was never really a candidate, and now they've got a pretty good man. And from what
I'm going to remind you, though, that Dick Williams opposed Michael Thurman to be superintendent, and I said, let's give him a chance. You did.
I
did.
Right.
I remember being the lone defender of Michael.
And I also think that they were, while Michael Thurman did a great job in stabilizing and turning things around, I think the school board was interested in getting a professional educator in the seat of the superintendency. So
You're right. All right, let's stay in DeKalb for a moment. As we suggested last week, Lee May resigned that District 5 commission spot, and now it looks like there's a free-for-all. I'm kind of amused. He resigns in a press conference a week ago Friday. Saturday, residents of the 5th District of DeKalb County got Mother's Day cards in their mailbox. Happy Mother's Day from Vaughn Irons, who has been the chairman of the DeKalb Development Authority. Lee May says he didn't tip him off that he was leaving. Is Vaughn Irons clairvoyant?
Well, he must be clairvoyant, and I saw that Mother's Day mailing. And by the way, it's a heck of a way to start off. He's got an ethics cloud over him already, and as we taped, there was no committee for Mr. Irons at all. So you have to register.
Well,
he may need you for advice on how you handle a committee.
campaign, right?
Well, they have.
He said he's running to get rid of that cloud of
ethics.
ethics.
May 18th to file, and so. But no, back to the Mother's Day card. Listen, when I ran now Mayor Reed's race back in 2009, they did a very good thing back in Mayor Franklin's campaign. They sent Mother's Day cards to all of the mothers. Now, I think that the CEO has come out and said there was no coordination between him and Vaughn Irons, and I think he's been public about that. But there are some people that can make that assumption. But I think that race is really heating up. There are going to be a lot of good people who are running. And let's focus on something too. That this is a really big deal for interim CEO to basically Lee May to basically say, look, I want to resign from this seat to basically give those folks a voice.
All right, now, Theron, walk us through it, because you're going to think more practical politics than we might.
Sure.
If Burl Ellis in his retrial in June is acquitted, or there's another mistrial, what have you, Lee May would be out of a job and a paycheck. How does that set him up to run for chief executive in 2016?
Well, a lot is determined on the outcome of this new trial that's going to be starting in June. I think that, look, he knew when he decided to resign from that post, which he wanted to make sure that the people have representation. He cannot wait and sort of on a verdict to determine whether he's going to continue to try to lead. Now, if Burl is acquitted, I think Burl goes back into being CEO. However, he still will have to run a re-election because it is this election year for his.
And Lee May has to get his ethics problems cleared up. That's another factor.
As long as we're interviewing Theron,
Sure.
Why did he do it now? Lee May, why did he wait for 2 years?
Look, I think, and I can't speak for Lee May, and and
but you're the political. Okay.
No, but I think it was about leadership, and let me tell you why. He got a document showing that his signature had been forged. He brought in Mike Bowers to basically do an investigation on everyone in the county. And I think that what he said is that, listen, the community has been reaching out to him. He still interacts with a lot of those constituencies. I think what he said in his statement is that he really wanted to show progress in the county. But Alexis, I'll tell you the other reason why is because he's got to get things done. There are a lot of key agenda items that are just on the board agenda that they cannot get passed because of that.
The commission's been split too.
Well, and I think he was getting a lot of pressure. You're forgetting to say that. But I'm going to make a prediction.
He was getting
a lot of pressure,
district.
And he reacted to the pressure. It wasn't some great leadership thing, Theron. But anyhow, I think that from my law enforcement
Did you just give him the back of your hand?
I know.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
You said I couldn't touch you before the show. You're just going to give me
I'm just saying that it's not leadership.
No,
You're
it was
wrong.
leadership. No,
You're
I'm
wrong.
right. It was.
And I will say this, according to my law enforcement sources, he's not going to be around politically to be a viable person after all of this ethics investigation.
Well, you know what?
Prediction.
You know this, Phil, better than anyone. Hypotheticals are the weakness of any argument. To basically go on the show and say this guy is not going to be around.
I can give you my sources. I can give you my sources.
Well,
what they're telling you this, and this is information for our viewers. So if you're supporting Lee May, watch out.
I'm supporting good leadership, and I'm supporting a person who wants to basically get things done on the board. And you're right, there was some people in that community that showed up at the meetings to get things done.
You're just going to defend Lee May no matter what. He's in serious ethical trouble, Theron.
All right. Well, we'll see how serious that is in the weeks ahead, because there are those multiple investigations of corruption in DeKalb County. We've got the feds, we've got the county, we've got Mike Bowers.
And keep an eye on those P cards. I think almost all of those commissioners are going to have problems.
In some jeopardy. Yes, you're right. All right. When we come back, how's this for a duo? Victor Hill and Kasim Reed. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
Before we turn to politics, a quick shout out to Clayton County. It's been a very good week. There was no news involving your sheriff, Victor Hill. None. And the woman whom he shot appears to be recovering well, and that's good news. Kasim Reed, we joke on this, and there have been some good newspaper columns about Kasim Reed's temperament. My goodness, he fired out this week at Maria Supporter, the former colleague of ours, who now writes a blog. And I mean, it's a blog. And Kasim Reed treated it like it was a federal case. There, what do you think? Does he? I mean, the deal with Fort Mack, I mean, that's a good deal. There weren't any other major bidders.
Well, listen, look, Mayor Reed has a very direct communication style when it comes to certain people, for certain people of the press. And I cannot speak for him, but Maria Supporter is a good reporter who has really done a good job of covering City Hall, and she's a person that I admire a great deal. However, listen, Fort Mack is going to be ultimately good for the citizens of Atlanta. Tyler Perry has basically done everything that he said he was going to do. Now, Maria's post did point out some good points. I mean, you got to look at it.
Well, for example,
hold on,
the taxpayers are on the hook.
Don't cut me off, Phil.
But just say what she said.
She did raise some good points. But what the mayor did was this, and this shouldn't be new news for us. I mean, whenever he feels that there are points that he can make and state it with facts, he took the time to really write a very detailed statement, and he basically answered some of the criticism that was in Maria's post.
The criticism is the taxpayers are on the hook, and as we talked about at the time, you know, that is an unusual deal to have city taxpayers.
Yeah, but if you go back,
the city retains the vast majority of the acreage.
Absolutely.
For future development.
And Phil, one of the things
it's a legitimate debate. I'm not saying that the mayor's wrong. I'm not saying that Maria is wrong. I do think, though, the mayor did have a right. I mean, she is a respected writer. She does write for the Business Chronicle still. I thought it was a legitimate public policy debate.
Right, and that's exactly what it is. And again, now how he goes about it, you know, may be a little different than some other people in the region. But the other thing is, too, the taxpayers were going to be on the hook no matter what, because if you really go back to how the city and how the BRAC process went down with Fort Mack closing and the city sort of stepping in, it was no matter what, the city was going to have, and taxpayers were going to have some responsibility.
You are correct.
Thank you.
But when the other, here's the but, when the other studios do the deal, they don't have this, the taxpayers backing them up. You know, there's other movie, TV studio deals all over the area.
Let me end it by saying this. They didn't have a major developer who wanted to go into Fort Mack.
Right.
Felker Ward has run that commission for a long time.
Right.
This is what they can get.
Right.
They're doing something. I think that's fine, and they retain the rest of the acreage. And Tyler Perry is going to preserve the beautiful housing and all that exists on the old base. All right, let's turn to politics. Republican convention was in Athens this weekend. Unfortunately, we were taping in advance of it. Several presidential candidates there. But Insider Advantage, your company, Phil, came out with a poll for Fox 5 that actually startled me. You want to tell us about it?
Well, I was surprised too. What the poll did is it surveyed the likely Republican voters in the March 1st next year presidential primary, and there was a tie. Ben Carson got 20%, and Mike Huckabee 20%. Of course, Huckabee won the primary in 2008. Marco Rubio was third. That was very interesting. Down at fourth was Jeb Bush. Fifth was Ted Cruz. Well, sixth was Walker.
What surprised me me, Phil, was that I didn't think any candidate would be at 20%. You've got two of them in that poll at 20%. Doesn't that seem high?
Listen, what this poll shows, and I don't want to get into the validity of the poll. I think the poll it shows what you saw in Iowa as well. You know, in Iowa, the GOP caucus there basically said that 25% of the voters there would not support Jeb Bush. Now, I'm not surprised that Huckabee and Carson are leading a poll in Georgia right now, because what you see is the problem that the Republican Party has right now, and that is that you have their voters that are so extremist, they're so right now.
That's
me. And they're looking for a candidate that's so extreme that they're not even willing to give, you know, a Jeb Bush.
Carson is an extremist?
Well,
Yes.
He is a very, he
That's
is
ridiculous.
Well,
Huckabee's an
He has-
extremist?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you know what you forget? Do you remember last November 4th? This wasn't a problem at all for the Republican Party. It's a center-right party. You may not like, quote-unquote,
Let me tell you something.
extremists,
Ain't
but
nothing center right about
you
the Republican
lost
Party.
last November and you
No,
still hadn't
no,
gotten
you're-
over it.
you're right.
Let me
You're
jump
right.
in here. I can understand Mike Huckabee being at 20%. After all, he won Georgia several years ago.
And he's had a TV
But
show
Ben
for
Carson,
the last 5
Ben
years.
Carson is not a fixture on television and radio. He's a pediatric neurosurgeon.
Right.
He's not widely known to the public.
well,
That's
maybe when-
fascinating
when
that he gets
Well,
20%.
he's known to the base. He's known to the
Well,
base.
when Phil heads to the convention in his police escort, I'm sure he'll be able to share with us some of the ideas that are going to come out of the
Well, I
convention.
will give you a full report next
Next
week.
week.
Well, and let's note your poll, Phil, also said that Johnny Isaacson is virtually unbeatable.
Well, that's right. Those it was a tremendous approval rating, both for Johnny Isaacson and for Governor Deal. So Republican voters, at least, are happy with their leaders.
All right, last word here. Sally Yates, the former U.S. Attorney for North Georgia, was confirmed this week by the Senate to be the Deputy U.S. Attorney General in Washington. 12 senators voted against her. They should be urinating in a cup. They need drug testing. All right, when we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And we'll begin winners and losers with Phil Kent.
Well, I meant to get to it last week and didn't, but our freshman U.S. Senator David Perdue had a maiden speech on the Senate floor recently. And I tell you what, I think it was something that both parties could buy into. He got bipartisan praise. He did blame both parties for the mess in Washington, and rightly so. And he also talked about, Alexis, that $18 trillion debt, and he pointed out you just can't print money. So I thought of you when he said that.
Except that you can, and we do, but go ahead.
I've got some good news, too. We talk about the problems in Georgia's educational system, but the popular U.S. News and World Report high school ratings came out just the other day, and you'll all be interested in this. #1 in the state and #4 in the nation was the Gwinnett School of Math, Science, and Technology, so they are a real winner there. Second was from my old stomping ground in Augusta, the Davidson Fine Arts Magnet School. They often get #1. Third was Columbus High. Fourth, Dick, was the DeKalb School of the Arts, always a great school. And 5 was the Savannah Arts Academy, all winners.
Common thread there, Phil. Magnets and charters.
Yes.
Experimentation. Veering from the traditional public model. Okay, Alexis, what you have?
Okay, I'm going to leave that comment alone because you know how I feel about charters. But I'm going to salute Doug Shipman, who decided to step down after a year at the helm of the new Center for Civil and Human Rights after having been there at the creation of it. And Deborah Richardson is going to take over. Also, Jillian Laub, who is the director of Southern Rights. It's going to be on HBO Monday night, a documentary about Mount Vernon, Georgia. You ever heard of that?
No.
Well, it was called to their attention by Anna Rich Chafin, who's here in Atlanta now, about their segregated proms back in 2000.
Oh, yeah.
And so the documentary that's the basis, but it goes on from there about
On
other...
HBO?
On HBO, right. And then finally, my friend Joe Barry Carroll is going to be at the Decatur Library. Can we see that? On May 20th, and he's going to be signing and reading from his book. It's a book of memoirs, and that includes his artwork. Amazing stuff. So everybody should check out that, and all the proceeds go to the Innocence Project. And he's a former NBA.
He was a great
all-star.
player, but obviously an even more talented artist.
Ac-
All right, Theron, what do you have?
I'm going to go quick here. Rest in peace to a legend, B.B. King, who passed
Yeah.
away. So definitely want to make him a winner. Also, Dr. Carlton Brown is retiring from CAU, so we want to thank him for his service. And also, I want to make the state Democrats in the Senate a winner. It came out this week that they got roughly $3 million to go towards dealing with the minority participation gap that we have in the state. And also they got scholarships for students and transportation. And then lastly, my loser is going to be Principal Nancy Garduke. For the comments that she made at the TNT graduating ceremony. She was fired. That was the right decision. We do not need administrators who are not open-minded and who are not colorblind when it comes to leading.
Bizarre.
Yeah,
at
it was
best.
very, very
Bizarre
unfortunate.
At best. All right. From my side of the aisle, how about the peregrine falcon? A nest has been found for the first time in 80 years in Georgia. It's up in Tallulah Gorge. I wish they'd put a camera on it like they do that eagle up at Berry College. That's kind of cool, a peregrine falcon. And we lost Alan Blackburn, a longtime judge of the Court of Appeals this week. He was 76 and a good man. See you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.